Hey everyone, and welcome to another Unity tutorial. This one's going to be a quick tutorial. It is on Draggable UI Elements. This is going to be able to work for the canvas that has the render mode set up for camera overlay or for camera space. So we'll go ahead and get into it. You can just create a new Unity project. As you can see, I'm using 2021. And we'll go inside your project. I've already got my layout set up and I got Visual Studio open with this script already, so go ahead and create a, if you haven't downloaded the project, you can just go and create a script called Draggable UI or whatever you want to call it. While that loads, we're going to come into here, we're going to go into UI, and we're going to create, I like just to click on a panel. Panel automatically goes and sets up the canvas for us and creates this panel. Save it. Let me save my scene. Under here, go to new, folder, scenes. Inside of scenes, just call it main. We'll save it. Okay, awesome. So everything is saved now. I want to put this in my scene view on 2D. Scroll out so I can see what we're doing. I want to see the canvas. Double click on the canvas. And so the panel, I don't want the panel to take up the whole screen. So let me just make it about this size, about here. Like that. Nothing too fancy. So what we want to do in this tutorial is be able to make this, I don't want it to stretch. We'll just set it in the middle. So it's in the middle of the screen. Just got a UI element hanging out in the screen. We want to make this draggable. We click on something and we move it. I have it set to where we're going to make it to where it doesn't go outside of the screen either. And a lot of times I haven't been able to find too many videos on that clamp it within the screen resolution. Doesn't matter what resolution you have. I have these set up as extra for me to test against. So we'll be able to go and do that together as well. So what we'll do is we'll open up the Draggable UI, but I've already got that set up inside of here. And what we'll do is put it inside of the scripts namespace, Unity Engine. It's from Mono Behavior. And we're also going to get it to inherit from two interfaces. We have the iDrag. We have the iDrag handler. And then we have the iBeginDrag handler. And then I'm using Visual Studio. If you click on this and hit Control P, it'll automatically go ahead and click Implement Interface. And we can do the same here. Implement Interface. And we can just leave them. I don't like the way they put them there. So we'll do that and then come down here under Start. Okay. So basically we want to do something whenever we click on it to drag and while we're dragging it. We're going to have a few variables we're going to set inside of here. We're going to go ahead and get a private reference to rect transform. This would be the panel transform. This is the actual game object right here that we're going to, that panel that was on the UI. And then we're going to need, I want a serialized field. This would be a serialized field. And this one's going to be access to the canvas element that we have in the UI. And we'll have a private boolean to allow us, are we allowing to drag? Are we allowing the drag to take place? And then under that, we're going to have one more for private vector2 bottom left boundary. And we're just going to set that to default of vector2.0. And the reason we're doing this is because whenever we do drag the screen, whenever we do get the dragging to begin, these are variables. Let's go back into Unity. Now we're going to take the Draggable UI and we're going to go and put it on the panel, or whatever object you wanted to call it. Now you'll see in the inspector we have it set up here. Go ahead and bring your canvas onto it. Okay, so everything is set up within there like we should. Let's go back into Visual Studio. On Start, what we're going to do is we want to set up the transform panel. So parent, panel transform is set to get component. rect transform this. We're going to get the component that's part of this, and then we're going to set allow drag to true. By default, yes, you can go ahead and drag it. Okay, so now we're going to get into the nitty gritty, and we're going to do some, we're going to work on the, let's do the begin drag first, because it's super simple. All we're going to do is whenever you begin to drag on the element, you're going to set allow drag to true. And I'll explain why in a moment. So now we're going to go into the onDrag function. And this one's not too long. It's pretty straightforward. So basically we want to check to see if we're not allowing this to be dragged, then we're just going to return from the method. So if you're dragging on top of the UI element, but the flag is set to false, you're not allowing them to drag. So then the UI element just won't move. And that's kind of what you want. What we're going to do first is we need to get the corners of this object. We have a left bottom, left top, right bottom. So we want to get all the corners. But the two that I'm going to worry about the most are the bottom left and the top right. Because if in theory, when you move this to the right, you don't want this corner to go past the window. If you move it up, you don't want this corner at the top to go above the window. And it's the same thing with bottom left. You don't want the bottom left to go down too far or bottom left to go far to the left. So those are the two corners we're going to concern ourselves with. And the way we're going to do that is I'm going to create a temporary variable called corners. That's going to be a new vector. It's going to be an array of vector 3s. Like this. We're going to set that up. And then we're going to go and set up another one called bot left. This is going to be the bottom left. It's going to be temporary set to a vector2.0. And then we're going to do the same thing for top right. Vector2.0. Okay, so we got our temporary variables. Now what we want to do is we want to get what's called the corners. Get the world corners, and it's going to return an array of vector 3s. And that is going to be stored inside of this variable here. So this is going to go in there and say, hey, Unity, I want you to go into our panel, and then I want you to get all 4 corners for us. So it's going to go ahead and it's going to do that. Now what we're going to do here is, you'll notice, right before I get into the next part, I'm going to show you something. So if you go into the canvas, if you click on canvas, and I can explain it while the script is compiling. If you go into the canvas and you go into the render mode, there's 2 different render modes you can choose from. When I was testing this, I noticed that the code I was writing can work for both, but you're going to need to also do something slightly different depending on what camera mode you're in. We won't touch world space. This is specifically for doing the UI on overlay and camera. So I'm going to leave it defaulted to overlay, and we're going to go in here inside of the, we're going to change this, and I'm going to show you, make sure we can get them working in both for you. So what we'll do is we're going to say if the canvas render mode is equal to render mode dot overlay. Okay, so if we're doing the overlay, we're going to come into here and we're going to do something. Well, if it's not overlay, we're going to do canvas dot render mode equals render mode dot screen space camera. We're going to do something different. Okay, space overlay, and then screen space camera. So on screen space overlay, what you have to do is we're going to set the variables for this. So we're going to say bottom left, okay, is going to be equal to a new vector 2 that is going to be corners 0.x, and corners 0.y. Then you're going to add to it the event delta that's passed in. Come on, give me the event delta. Oh, event data. Give me the event data dot delta divided by the canvas dot scale factor. This is for bottom left. Now what we'll do is we'll copy this and then we'll do top right is going to be corners 2, and that's it. Now what is it? So what am I doing here? So the event delta is basically based on your pointer, which is your mouse, and the delta is saying, hey, how is the mouse moving? Is it moving left? Is it moving right? Is it up, down? Is it a combination, diagonal? This is what the delta is going to help bring, is what direction you're moving in. This scale factor is based on the scaling of the canvas itself. So if you ever drag an item in the UI, when you drag an item in the UI, let's say you click in the middle of the element and you move your mouse and the object moves. Well, you want your mouse to stay in the middle of the object. You would want to make sure you divide by scale factor, because if you don't divide by scale factor, as you move fast, your mouse could end up way over here, but yet your element is over here on the screen, and you don't want that. Unless you do, that's completely up to you. So what's going to happen is we're going to set the bottom left here and the bottom right here. Okay, so this is going to set it up for screen space. What are these corners doing? Well, as I said, this is going to give you an array of 4 with vector 3s. So think about it like this. You have bottom left, and it says in the Unity documentation what does get world corners do and how it returns it. It returns it back as 4 vector 3s. The first index will be bottom left. The second index will be top left. The third index will be top right, and the fourth will be bottom right. We don't want bottom right, and we don't want top left. We just want bottom left, which is where it starts, which is index 0, and then we want to skip top left and go top right. So then we go to index 2 of this. Switch these up. We'll do camera here, and then we'll do screen space overlay here. So I apologize. So this will be for screen space. This is going to be screen space overlay. And then we're going to have screen space camera. Now inside of here, we're going to set up some temporary variables. We'll do BL for bottom left. And you're going to do the camera.main, because it's going to be based on the main camera. So we'll do camera.main.world to screen point. We want to take the world coordinates that we just got, and we want to turn them to screen coordinates. And then we want to get corner 0. Because as we said before, corner 0 is bottom left. You're going to do the same thing for the top right, which was index 2, and we're going to say var tr for top right. So now that we have those in screen coordinates, what we need to do now is, now we're going to set our bottom left variable to a new vector 2, and it's going to be blx bly. And then we're going to add, we're going to do this exact same formula here. We're going to add the delta to it and the scale factor. Copy it, paste it. Then we're going to do top right is going to be top right here. So what is this doing? We're getting the world, we're getting the screen coordinates of our left bottom corner and our top right corner from the world, and then we're going to go and say I want to create a new vector 2 out of this. And the reason I'm doing this is because this is a vector 2, this is a float, this returns a vector 3. Unity will not allow you to add a vector 3 and a vector 2 together. So we're just turning a vector 3 to a vector 2. We don't even need the z-axis because this is basically moving on x and y coordinates anyway. So this is just a way of converting it to a vector 2, so we can go ahead. So now what we have is we have the position that needs to be moved. Okay, so as of right now, if you drag, you're getting all the coordinates that you need. However, we're not updating the position yet of the object and watching it move. So let's go ahead and do that now. So in order to do that, what we want to do is we want to get the bounds. We want to say if bottom left dot x is greater than our bottom left boundary x that we set, and we have bottom left y position is greater than bottom left boundary dot y. Okay, so we're saying if the bottom left x that we grabbed, or of where our image is, our little UI object, if the bottom left of our UI is greater than the left side of the screen, and it's greater than the bottom of the screen in the y direction, we're saying if that is the case, now we want to make sure the top right dot x is going to be less than our screen width, and top right dot y is less than screen dot height. Okay, I'll go ahead here, do this. Now we're saying if this, so if all of that is happening, what we're saying is our UI is in a place that it can continue to move around. It's within bounds of the screen. Then what we're going to do is we're going to do this dot panel transform Okay, then we're going to do panel transform dot, oh, we got this, panel transform dot, you get the anchored position, because this is how you're going to move the UI object. Anchored position is going to be plus equal this. You got to move it based on the delta and the scale factor. You're saying, hey, I'm allowing you to move. You basically, this is your boundary saying, hey, if you're within bounds, we're allowing you to move, so let's move. And then one last thing we're going to add, this is just for something that I like to do personally, you may or may not want this. Basically, I'm going to say if you're clicking and dragging this object and you drag your mouse off of the screen, but you're still holding the mouse button down, and then you drag back onto the screen, it's going to keep moving your object. Well, if you don't want to do that, I'm going to set it up right now to where if you're dragging an object and you go to the end of the screen, it's going to stop dragging when the mouse leaves the screen, and when you come back into the screen, it doesn't matter if you're holding the mouse down or not, you have to click on that object to start dragging it again. So that's what this is to do. This is to prevent moving of the object while you're dragging outside of the screen. So input mouse position dot x. So if the input mouse position dot x is less than or equal to 0, so if it's outside of the window on the left, or if input dot mouse position, I'm just going to start copying this because it'll be quicker, if it's less than this, or if mouse position dot y is less than or equal to 0, so if you just went below your screen, or if this dot x is greater than equal to, if you went outside of the width of your screen, or if you did your y position is greater than or equal to, you went outside the height of your screen, like this. So if you went outside of the screen with your mouse, we're simply going to, all we're going to simply do is we're going to go over here and we're going to say allow drag, and we're going to allow drag to be false. I don't want you dragging anything. So this is what's going to happen. On begin drag, you're going to say, okay, you can start dragging. When you are dragging, if you cannot allow it, it's going to return. Well, we are in this case. Go ahead and cache our coordinates we need, variables for later, and then go ahead right here, get the world corners and store them in here. Now that that's happened, if it's a screen space camera, we need to convert those world coordinates to screen points for bottom left and top right. Then we're going to go ahead and add the mouse's movement and divide by the scale factor and add it into these variables. And we're going to go down here and we're going to compare it to say, hey, if you move the mouse, is it going to still be within range of X and within a range Y? If it is, then allow the panel to be moved. If we're trying to move the object outside of the screen, it says right here, if you take the mouse movement you were doing, let's go ahead and see what it would be if we added it to its current position already of the object in the canvas. So, okay, well, if I take the UI's current position, the element, and I add the mouse to it, am I going to be off the screen if I make this move or not? This is what this check does. It says, hey, if you make that move, are you still going to be in my screen? If you are, go ahead and move. If not, nothing's going to happen. And it's always going to check to see when you're dragging if the mouse left the screen or not. Screen space overlay, you don't have to worry about rendering the coordinates out here to world space. You already got the world corners that you needed here. You don't need screen points for these for the overlay. So then it's just this. So with all this being said, now we can go back in here, let it rebuild. And I'll show you the different resolutions, and I'll show you for each render mode as well. So we'll start out here. Let's see, rebuild. Okay, now what we're going to do is let's look at the canvas. Let's keep it on overlay for the moment. Let's go ahead and give us some room. Okay, so now that we got it started, all we're going to do is simply this. Keep it on overlay, go ahead and drag it to the top right. You notice how it stops moving. It won't go above the screen. It won't go below the screen. It won't go too far to the right. It won't go too far to the left, if you see this. So, with that being said about the mouse, if I quickly drag over here, you notice how it stops this far from the screen? Well, that's because we stopped dragging. We left the screen. Now, I'm still holding the mouse button down. I haven't let it go yet. When I come back in and move, nothing's happening because I ended the drag phase. So if you want to drag it again, you need to go back, click and drag again. And then so this is with the overlay. This is basically what it is. You can come into here, you can move it all you want. Your mouse stays where you want it to. Obviously, if you go from here and then you go up here, I moved really quick. It did move, but just be careful about how fast you move, because honestly, if you're going to move and it's going to hit a boundary, your mouse is going to keep moving. So that's for a 16 by 9. If we do 16 by 10, I can still hit all of these corners correctly. If I can go to a 1920 by 1080 screen, as you can see, my we don't have this, we have this basically scaling and things like that, but the position is what you want to focus on. As you can see, you can still move stuff around. It's locked within bounds. If we go to this here, that stays within space. And if we do QHD, we'll do this. Oops. This. And then if you want to go to like this, you can move it. It's just scaling because that's the way we have it set up. But there you go. It's not messing with the position of it at all, because if you look in the scene, go scene, panel view, let's just make this bigger. Okay. Bigger screen, everything's still the same. It's still going to move like it should. You got all 4 of your corners. And now if we go to like something smaller, like 800, if we go to a smaller screen and then we go here, like this, that's because it's not in this, it's not in the screen because of the size of it. So if I go to panel and then we zoom all the way out and then we do this, okay, we're in the scene, it's still going to block it. So then you won't be able to move outside of it. Now what we can do is we'll turn this off. We're going to hurry up and switch the canvas to the camera. Screen space camera, and then we're going to give it the main camera. Okay, we're going to do the same thing. We'll start off with 16 by 9. You can start off with whatever you want, by the way, but this is just going to be for testing purposes. Okay. Okay, so now that we got that on, as you can see, when you move with the screen, there you go. Same thing, you can move it all you want. Everything is great. That's 16 by 9. You can do 16 by 10. And then you can do a full HD. That. All your corners. And we'll go to 1366 by 768. You can do QHD. That. And then you can go to 4K. Let's make it bigger in the console. Okay, just so it'd be easier for me to grab like this. Cancel. There's your out, and then there's your box. You can't see it. And there's your box there. And then you can do 800 if you want. And then we'll go ahead and make sure it's dragged within the screen. The reason it's not moving when I click on it here is because it's not, all four corners are not within the actual canvas. So if we move it back up, now we can start moving it. So, and there you go. And then before we go, I'll show you real quick. If you don't know how to do this, you can go to displays. You can add a test. You can do a fixed resolution. And then you can choose whatever you want. So when I added the 3840 2160 for 4K, I just added it here. So if you want 1920 by 1080 into yours, call it whatever you want. Like I called this one test, and then I changed this to 800 and this to 600, and I hit OK. And then now you have testing. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the tutorial. The project will be up on GitHub, and you'll be able to get the script. It really is just that one script, and then whatever object you want to drag this onto, give it canvas access, and you're good to go.